Hello and welcome back to another video. So today we are going to do something that is fairly easy and really impressive. You might have seen artists on social media, mostly Instagram and YouTube, and they are doing these amazing pencil drawings where they are drawing usually someone from behind and where the main focus is their hair. And the hair always looks so impressive. It looks very realistic and soft and aesthetic. So the thing about drawing hair, at least in my opinion, is that it is one of the easiest thing one can draw, but it's also one of the most impressive things. So with these tips, you will be able to draw hair like a professional, and I promise you, you will be able to impress all your friends and family. And I would even go so far that you don't need that much drawing experience. So even if you barely someone who draws and you don't consider yourself an artist by any means, I still think that you will be able to pull this off and impress everyone. And maybe, just maybe, you will like it so much that you will actually start your drawing journey, and that would be even cooler. So when it comes to drawing, I think there are two, or like painting, drawing in general, there are two main categories that one needs to cover, right? The first thing is shapes, knowing how a shape looks like, whatever you want to draw, knowing the perspective, knowing at some point also the rendering part. But shapes is always something that people struggle with, that I also do struggle with. So there are certain shapes that I'm really good at drawing, there are certain shapes that I'm fairly bad at drawing. And the second thing is technique. So regarding the technique, that's also like a very lengthy process. And I know that I can still learn so much regarding my technique when drawing. But I think to learn the basics, like basic technique when drawing, is fairly easy to do. So when I talk about technique, I mean, the way you apply the pigment to the paper. Are you doing short strokes? Are you doing very long strokes? Are you having much control over the strokes, or are they more random? Are you doing a cross pattern for shading? That is technique. So today we are drawing a braid because it is a very easy shape to draw. So before we start doing it on graphite and paper, I really want to show you what the shape of an easy braid would look like, because it's really important that you understand how things look and how shapes work whenever you want to draw something. So let's take a look here. So basically a twist braid, or a rope twist, is made of two strands, and each strand is individually twisted in one direction. So first thing you need to do is you sketch the base shapes. So you start with a slightly curved vertical line that will be the center axis of the braid, just to make sure that you keep the right direction. Secondly, you add the two strands. So the two strands will form basically a pattern alternating S-shaped curves that loop around the center line. And what I'm doing here, I'm drawing it as if it was transparent, so it's easier to guide the eye. So that's just for you, right? So the transparent part of it would be erased for the final drawing, but just to make it more understandable. So each of these S curves represent the two strands wrapping around each other, and each S overlaps the previous one, creating a twisting and spiraling look. Second thing that you should keep in mind is that the volume changes throughout the braid. So usually hair is way thicker at the top of the hair where it's very healthy and young, and that's why there it appears thicker, and it gets very thin at the bottom. So your braid should start very thick at the top and gradually should get thinner and thinner at the bottom. If you draw someone that has very long hair and they have like a very long braid, this will be very drastic, right? If you draw someone that has short hair and a short braid, the difference in volume shouldn't be as dramatic, because usually, especially long hair, tends to get very thin at the bottom, whereas mid-length hair doesn't do that as much. But that's just like to be very, very realistic. But honestly, these kind of small details make a drawing very realistic and just give it like a certain, it just makes it better. It's sometimes in the detail. So here you can see me drawing the shape in graphite, and I'm doing exactly what I did on the iPad. So for the whole thing, I just used a very normal graphite pen. Here I'm using an H, so it's fairly hard. Yeah, just simple, easy, cheap graphite pen. So for this whole thing, we are going to use only very cheap materials. I think I only used 2 pens, right? So this one and also a dark one. So now that we are finally done with the shape, we can actually start drawing the hair. And that is where technique comes into play. So for that, you have to follow one core principle, and that is that hair is not a flat shape. It's a textured structure made of many individual strands. So treating it like a solid mass makes it look stiff and unnatural. So first thing you need to keep in mind then is think in structures and not in shape. Don't draw the outline of a braid or hairstyle and just fill it in like a flat shape. Instead, think about how each individual strand behave and interact. So hair has depth and layering. So it's not like one strand is next to the other one. It's more like a flowing and tangled structure fabric than a flat surface. And in order to achieve this, you have to use loose and directional strokes. So you draw with quick and light strokes that follow the direction of the hair growth, or in this case, the braid. You should avoid harsh lines or trying to draw each hair. All you need to do is really suggest the texture with controlled repetition and strokes. What you can also do is vary in pressure and in line quality. So you can start with a very light pressure to see how the shape turns out, and then you can start layering and here and there add a bit of a more pressured stroke, I guess. So what you just saw me doing was just that. So I started from the top, suggesting the strokes and suggesting the general form of the braid. And then I did the same thing from the bottom part. And what I did is I got looser and looser towards the middle to suggest some sort of lighting going on. And this is what makes it so three-dimensional. So now I'm switching gears. So I started now using the 6B pencil because it has lots more pigment going on. It's a lot darker. So I'm usually using it for the shading part. And I want to have the bottom and the top of this specific piece of the braid to be more three-dimensional. So I'm adding just a bit more shade and contrast. And for that, I'm using a 6B. You could use it a 12B or whatever. So this one is a bit special because it has very dark pigment. It's kind of like a special graphite pencil, but you could also use a regular one. Just use one that allows you to have more contrast. Just keep in mind for these kind of pencils, so the softer ones, the B ones, you have to keep them very sharpened so you don't lose on the detail, and you have to rotate the pencil as you draw to maintain a fine point and prevent the lead from wearing down unevenly and having a dull tip. So, and everything I just did, I'm just going to repeat for all the different shapes. And that's what I meant by saying a braid is a very easy and nice shape to draw, because with each part of the braid, you get to practice this whole thing again, right? Having the strokes, getting like coming from the top and then from the bottom, having some white space in the middle to give it a bit more of 3-dimension and lightning, and also have some bigger strokes, some softer strokes, just to give it more texture, I guess. And once you are happy with the result, you can switch the pencil to a pencil that is a bit more soft and has a lot more pigment, like I'm doing right now, and give it even more dimension. And the best thing is, you don't have to worry about strokes that are getting out of the shape. Actually, that's even better, because if you look at a braid, you would see that they are rarely perfect. There's always like some loose little hairs going on, and that's what it makes even more realistic and soft looking. So yeah, I mean, from now on, it's getting very repetitive, right? You just have to repeat it, just have to keep in mind where the light comes from, keep the technique going. I think the most difficult part is to not get impatient with it. So I know for some kinds of hair drawings, you can spend hours on them. On this thing, I spend, I think, 40 minutes. And I think that is quite realistic. So don't overwork it. Sometimes it's better to keep it a bit more simple, but also be patient, right? Don't draw it like it was just a flat surface, because that's not what we are here for. Once you did that for all the little pieces, you can start connecting them, because in my case, I realized, they're not really connected. I just focused on each piece rather than the whole braid. And then I did the bottom. And for the bottom, you are just doing basically the same thing, except that you are not drawing the S shape now. So before I'm doing that, I'm just seeing that I'm adding a bit more detail and loose strands, because as I said, it makes it look a lot more softer and realistic, right? Sometimes it's in the details, as I said. So for the loose end at the bottom, you can just do the same technique as we were doing before, except that you are not in the S shape anymore. But I think by now you should have enough practice to pull that off as well. So just do the light strokes in the direction of the hair growth. Since we are at the bottom, just make sure that you get lighter towards the end to make it look even more soft. And then you can just do the same thing all over again. Have some variety in the brush stroke, in the pencil strokes, and have some lighter parts, have some darker parts, and in the end, go over it with like a very pigmented, not very soft graphite pen to give it even more details and even more 3-dimensional look. So I hope you liked this tutorial. I hope it was somewhat understandable. If you have any questions, just write me in the comments. I'm reading and answering all my comments always, and I'd be happy to help you. So yeah, thank you for watching, and seeing you in the next video. Bye.